All About Relationships is an engaging, lighthearted, and practical show designed to help people improve their relationships in meaningful ways. Hosted by Dr. Don Allen, a certified Gottman therapist, as well as an advanced trainer for the Institute. He is also certified in emotion-focused therapy. With over 40 years of experience in the field of psychotherapy, Dr. Allen is here to provide expert guidance on strengthening marriages, parent-child relationships, friendships, and more. Through insightful discussions, audience call-ins, and guest experts, viewers receive real-world strategies to enhance intimacy, communication, and overall relationship satisfaction. So now, please welcome the host of All About Relationships, Dr. Don Allen.
And welcome back. I'm Dr. Don Allen. Welcome to All About Relationships, working towards ideal marriages and loving, lasting relationships. I have a good show for you today. This one, I thought about it a little bit, and it wasn't an easy one to kind of explain, but I think by the end, you'll be happy you listened, and you'll get some really good things you can do to continue to improve your relationship. A few weeks ago, we did one on Valentine's Day. And the Valentine's Day was a ritual of connection. So we looked at how to really make for a nice Valentine's Day. The one after that, we looked about what goes into good sex. And that could dovetails nicely into the Valentine's Day weekend, potentially. Last week, we talked a little bit about just how to pick a good partner and how to build a relationship from the beginning so that it can last a lifetime. Today, I want to carry the momentum into this week. So that the title of the show is Putting the We Back in Us. Now, I know they don't go together, but what I also know is I look at relationships a lot of times and I can see the ones that are really with a lot of what they call we-ness. Okay. And I'm going to describe what that means. And in doing so, part of what I want you to do is to look and say, hey, that's us. Or, hey, that used to be us. Or, hey, I wish we had that. Or, wow, how do we get back to that we? So we're going to talk about that. And I've done a lot of different things with that today to hopefully explain it so you'll like it. So, one of the things that we do notice is, there are relationships that the people have mastered their friendship and they've mastered the going through life together with each other. And I kind of trying to figure out how to describe that to you. And right before I went on air, I was just kind of clearing my mind and thinking, and this is the one I came up with. I'm certified in emotion focused therapy. The person who invented that's name is Susan Johnson, and I'm sorry to say we lost Susan last April, but I was actually trained by her in her method, so it was really, really a treat to be understanding her method from her. But also, I just really enjoyed her as a person. She was really, really amazing. And she told me this story once, so I'm going to share it with all of you. And this has to do with the we, okay? She liked ballroom dancing. Now, I'm not super big a fan of ballroom dancing, but it's okay. But what she said was she loved to watch it and she loved to do it. And this is how she described it to me. She said, Don, she goes, I like to sit by the dance floor and I like to close my eyes, something like this, right? I like to close my eyes. And then she says, randomly, I would open them. And when I opened them, I would see a couple that happened to be ballroom dancing on the floor. And she said, some of the people I saw had really expensive costumes and their hair was just perfect and their makeup was perfect. And they were going around and they were spinning and they were doing all of the dance steps flawlessly. And they were spinning around and they were just amazing. But they really weren't dancing for each other. They were dancing for me to watch them. They were saying, look at the dancing. Look at how we're doing that. Right now, they were in sync and they were fine. But she said they weren't a we. It was an us dancing, not a we dancing, so to speak. She said, but then sometimes I would close my eyes again and then I would suddenly open them. And she said there might be a couple and they were just in jeans and a nice outfit and they were wearing flats and not heels, and they were trying to go through the steps, and they were stumbling over each other. And when they did, they would laugh spontaneously and look at each other and hug each other and try it again. And she goes, she goes, it seemed like they were the only ones on the dance floor to them. They didn't care about whether people watched them or how perfectly they did. They just loved being there together, trying together. That is a we. And that's what I'm talking about. And when you do we enough, people really kind of see you as a we. So you don't necessarily talk to them like they're individuals. I'll use the Gottmans. I always do. So it's John and Julie is John and Julie. I don't usually say John, or I don't usually say Julie. I usually say, oh, it's John and Julie, because they really have a wonderful relationship, and I enjoy watching them as a couple. There's a lot of strong we-ness. Now, I would imagine if I said that and they were sitting next to me, they'd probably say, oh, we have our share of conflict. And I'll bet they do, because we all do. But what we want to strive for in our life is that and people will notice it, but we need to start where you notice it, kind of like that couple that Sue was saying about, right? So we're going to look at the idea of how our relationship is right now. And we want to try to get us to move more towards we. I always say you can't get enough. You want to try to do that as best you can. Life happens to us, doesn't it? Life happens. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to try not to drift. Okay, so I put some questions here just to get us all excited about our show today. When was the first time we felt like a team rather than two individuals managing our lives? Have we drifted over balancing roles more than prioritizing our relationship? When stress happens to us, do we regulate that together or do we do it separately? Um, I like this one. I added this one at the last minute. Do we look like we're becoming our parents in our parents' house when we were growing up? I notice a lot of times people, especially when they first marriage and there's a lot of we and all of this is great, or they move in together and they have a relationship and it's just really great. But over time, we kind of start acting like we did when we were in our house growing up. And, some of those habits our parents had, we adopt for better or worse. But understand we're coming from our own family, so there can be a lot of individuation between us. So just that's kind of an interesting thing. Are we in harmony, or we are trying to do just the going through the motions, right? So like I said, welcome to my show, all about relationships. We're in the third season, if you can believe it. I'm really enjoying these. But our main goal is, the show is to think: was it true 2,000 years ago, and will it probably be true 2,000 years from now? If so, I want to talk about it. If it's something trendy or fashionable today, those are other shows. They're not mine. And remember, with Gottman, we always seek to understand before we seek to fix. So part of what got into me for this idea on the show is one of the things I think my wife and I do for a strong we is I like to track, and she likes to track things we enjoy. And we usually like to watch the Olympics, and that just happened to be on. And I can say that because the Olympics went on many, many years ago, probably 4,000 years ago. I don't even know when it started. But one of the things I noticed was the paired figure skating. And I kind of actually more and more have gotten into that more than ballroom dancing myself. But it's really interesting because, and I will remember the first time I ever saw the Olympics, when I was a kid, it was 1968, and Peggy Fleming, you can look it up on YouTube, you can watch her dance that or spin those things in the individual competition. And the thing I would like you to notice if you go back and you look at Peggy is she's amazing. She really was fantastic with what she was able to do, especially coming from somebody who can't even stand up on skates, right? And it was amazing. But you look at the young people doing that today in the Olympics. Oh my gosh, the strength is unbelievable. You could see it in their bodies. I saw this one person skating in the Olympics, and his knees were at a right angle, and this woman had her skates on his thighs, which, again, if you do that wrong, it's probably going to slice you. Those things are sharp. And this guy was spinning around with her on that, and he was able to get up, to a standing position. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. The strength involved. And then the same way with the woman, the ability to fly off of him and land and do something, like, land the skates and everything. It's truly remarkable. But the reason I'm talking to you about it is watch them as a couple, right? So what's going on with that, Because you're seeing individual excellence. Both of them are fantastic skaters, right? You can see the harmony within the dance. You can see that effortless appearance. The way I say that is it looks like I could do it. And believe me, what they're doing is unbelievably difficult, and just the strength involved, just incredible. And then the judges look and they score unity. But part of what the judges are doing is looking for weenus. Do they look like they're just floating on ice together and they're just having fun together and celebrating each other? And a lot of their dancing is about skating apart from themselves and then skating towards each other. I don't really know much about skating, but even I could figure that out. And it was interesting. But behind the scenes, how much practice, how much recalibration, how many times did they fall? How did they repair and get up and do well together anyway, even if they did fall down, right? How did they get together and continue to finish the show? And the same kind of thing, I'll bet you they get into arguments and stuff when they're practicing all the time, but how do they get back? And then what we see is the celebration of that. And the ones that do the very best get the gold, right? So we're looking at that. I would also say from a music perspective, um, if you look at a violin and a piano, playing in a duet, the ones that really do the best really have mastered the violin and mastered the piano. So they're free to be spontaneous and move with the rhythm and the harmonies and really, I would use the word attune to what the other person is doing effortlessly. And that's not easy. For people to give you that on stage takes hours. I even sometimes would go to like one of the outdoor concerts for one of the major symphonies because I like symphony music. And during those, a lot of times they let the students who are aspiring at colleges to play with them because some people take vacations and stuff. And I can watch a symphony and see which ones are which, right? And the ones that have mastered it, they're playing and it's very difficult, but they're riveted to the conductor and they're watching the conductor and they're watching the cues. The other people are watching their music and they're looking up, okay, and they're doing that, but they aren't the same as the ones who have really mastered the weenus of the symphonic um, dance, I guess I would say. So part of what I'm doing is taking these examples and I'm going to plug them in so you can look at that and say, where are we with all of this? Because it's just as important, I would argue more, that you are in sync like those people who are performing in music or in skating or in ballroom dancing or whatever. It's that idea that we're really attuned and connected harmonically with each other. That's we. And what happens is life can happen and we become an us, right? And some of the mailbag, I purposely went through to kind of look at different angles on this on my selection because I want to talk about just how life happens to all of us. This is us. We're all in this. I always say I don't know any gurus in my field, right? If we don't do this, we get into the same problems as anybody else. So we're all in this. We're all trying to make this happen so that, we celebrate couples. And if we do that, the families are better. And the other thing that happens is that life goes happier and faster. You'll be healthier. Statistics show that people who are in harmony live longer and they have fewer illnesses. The other thing I would say though is when you're really going through life and you're happy, I think time goes faster. Now that's just me; it's not scientific, but you're just skating through life. And by the way, I can't believe we're almost into March. That's how fast this this year is going. So we want to take advantage of it and build on that momentum from Valentine's Day and the New Year's resolutions. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to take some questions from the mailbag to start applying all of this we stuff. All right, take care. See you then.
Mike Zorich, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And we're back, and we're talking about we versus us in relationships. I'm Dr. Don Allen. This is all about relationships, working towards ideal marriage and loving, lasting relationships. I'll go ahead and put my information up on the board for you. I always encourage you to give me feedback. Like I said, sometimes when you do, it'll be a whole show because I can look at that and say, hey, I think I can do something with that. The other thing is, one of the things that I often say is I just want to get up here and start and just have a topic that somebody gives me and I just talk for an hour on it, just not even prep it. Because I love spontaneous. I love just kind of working towards just an idea that I can give you. And if you give me some of those, I might use them. So just wanted to show you that. We're going to go to the mailbag questions now and looking at how some of this stuff might apply to people practically, right? Okay, the first question, Dr. Don, my husband and I are not fighting. We run the house well, take care of the kids, and manage our schedules. Okay. But I feel more like a co-manager than a partner these days. Is it normal or is this the beginning of something worse? Well, I really like this question. And that's one of the reasons I selected it because people kind of just live their lives. We don't necessarily notice that we're just, getting up on Monday and all of a sudden it's Friday, right? And just getting the kids to soccer, all those things that we just do. But a lot of times what can begin to happen, and what I hear this is that the tail starts to wag the dog. Okay, that starts to happen. We become more like our parents. There's actually a commercial that jokes about this. And what we can do is drift. And I've talked about drift on shows, and it's not unusual that I keep coming back to it because we all know what drift is. Anybody who's gained 10 pounds, anybody who gets out of shape, right? We just get into our routines and we forget about some of the fundamentals, and that happens. Have you ever looked up and realized that you should have changed the oil on your car 15,000 miles ago? Just happens. The light didn't come on, but it was like, oh, shoot, I haven't looked at that. So life can happen to us. So this isn't a great example if there's no crisis, but it goes more to what I call an administrative marriage. So one of the things you've heard me say often is that with marriage, it's kind of like weeding the garden. You have to do it regularly. You can't look up 6 weeks later and say, well, I wonder if there's weeds growing, because what you'll find is the garden got taken. So, so one of the things I would suggest with this one is what we're going to talk about later today, which is to have regular meetings to talk about how's things going. Because I tell you what'll happen, you'll get in and you'll start talking about, okay, let's talk, because we've got to get the kids to, the piano lesson on Tuesday, and we've got to do this. We'll go right back to all of the tasks involved in running a household. This isn't that kind of meeting. John and Julie Gottman call this the state of the union, right? Your union relationship checkup. So we got to do those regularly. And then we have to have things built in each day for little check-ins. Doesn't have to be long, but we have to do that. I mentioned before, I really enjoyed this show. 7:25 in the morning, I'd be driving to work in Ohio a long time ago, and they had Dr. James Dobson focus on the family. They also had one with Frank DeFord for ESPN. That used to be called Wide World of Sports. And then they would have Rush Limbaugh, and they would come on and just give these little 5-minute segments of something to think about. I always like those. So one of the things Dr. Dobson said, as I've said before, is imagine you and your partner going down the river in different canoes. You have to occasionally make a row towards their canoe so you stay together. If you don't, you drift to each side of the river. That's what I'm talking about with drift. We have to make sure we're doing this. So if you're not, that's the first thing I would say, heads up. The other one is, it isn't the beginning of something worse, but it can start going that way. Because once we feel disconnected as a couple, what I notice oftentimes is we begin to then fill it with things that we want to do that are self-soothing just individually. So now we're on our phone more. Now we're watching more sports than we might like. Now we're going to bed early. Now we're, staying in the garage, puttering around hobbies we're doing. Maybe we're spending a little bit more time and getting the house clean, but we're really not doing it with somebody, so it goes longer, and just on and on and on. Maybe it's taking that half an hour to take a bath, and we're not connected with our partner because we didn't ask them to join us. So those kind of things are how that drift can happen. So what I would say to this person is stay tuned to our third section, because I'm going to talk about exactly how to counter this. Let's go to another question. When I am stressed, I want to talk things through with my wife, but she's stressed and she pulls away and wants space and wants to do her own thing. I end up feeling rejected. She ends up feeling pressured. How do we stop this pattern without making it worse? One thing I would say about those things, especially when somebody is feeling like they want to avoid these kind of conversations, and that's really important today, because we're going to ask you in the last section to go and do something this week. And a person who doesn't like all of that is going to want to avoid it. This should be something you look forward to and is fun, right? So in this kind of situation, if you're going to meet with somebody, try to see how much time makes sense. So let's say I want to meet for 5 hours. Well, they may want to meet for 10 minutes and maybe can tolerate 15. So what I would do is I would make time, but I would also be attuned to how much time before they get overwhelmed, and then talk about things that are interesting to them and you. And then at the end of it, try to find one little thing you can do connective wise that isn't so bad that they might want to do it again. So in these situations, you want to make sure you're not overwhelming the other person, but you're getting your needs met by talking about things that are important, chewable bites. Another analogy I have to that is, if I'm out of shape, I'm not going to go outside and run a marathon, right? Let's say I want to start running, and the best I can do is maybe walk a mile. That's a good place to start, right? And if you want to add some, you can. Sometimes you start walking a mile, you can only do a half a mile. It's the same kind of thing. So just looking for that. But the point I'm making here is there's no villain. There's no somebody bad. It's just somebody, how much can they tolerate with this, right? Let's see. See which one I want to do here. Lately, I find myself noticing other couples who seem happier and more connected. I don't want to compare, but I can't help it. Does this mean something wrong with our marriage? No, but potentially heads up, because we don't want to compare. We don't want to say the grass is greener. What you want to do instead is say, what am I noticing about that person's relationship that I wish I had? Let's take Sue Johnson's example. If she is watching that couple in jeans and a nice shirt and flats dancing and laughing and looking at each other, she may be saying, well, gosh, why can't we do this? Right? I don't know, but let's say that's what happens. Well, what I would do instead is, what am I noticing on the dance floor that I wish we had more of? Getting back to that. Say what you feel, not what you don't feel. Say what you want, not what you don't want. So, hey, honey, I was watching that couple dance the other day and I was noticing how they were doing it. Do you think you and I could practice at home and maybe get some of that joy that they were having on the dance floor between us? So see, now you're talking about capturing it versus, boy, I wish I was that person, right? So don't compare, look at what you want, add more to it, get that dialogue going. Okay. So real good. Let me check my time. Let's see. I've been realizing this next one. I've realized I've been spending more time on my phone at night instead of talking with my husband. It's not intentional, it just feels easier. Is that a sign of drift? I'm going to add that one to the next one from the mailbag. And ever since we had kids, everything revolves around them. We used to feel close and spontaneous. Now we're just exhausted. How do we bring back that sense of being together, that we-ness, without neglecting our responsibilities? Okay. So this is a really good segue, folks, because what we're going to be talking about is a step-by-step way of really having this. Now, I'm going to take a little more time before our break to talk about this, because I've often said you would not buy a brand new car and never change the oil or the brakes or the tires. You didn't say, well, I got the car, I don't have to do anything more to it. It requires examination. It requires, looking at how the car works, all that. And it involves taking it in and spending time and money to make sure that that car can protect us and can get us to where we want to be in life. Okay, relationships are very similar to that. They take time. You have to buy into that. You have to buy into it, and your partner does too. So the first thing you want to begin to do is have a discussion. Now, if you've been following my show, you probably have had New Year's resolutions about this. You've probably had a pretty good Valentine's Day, and you're also looking at cuddling and connecting, and hopefully that's transferring to the bedroom. All right. So now we're going to continue the momentum of that because we're coming into spring. This is a really nice time of year because there's a lot of stuff that we can do during this time. So, for example, right now, I might say you should be planning a 3 or a 4 day getaway. And the first thing you say back is, hey, we're doing something for spring break with the kids. We're waiting for their spring break and then we're going to go have some fun with the kids. That's wonderful. But it's not necessarily you both. Say that can do wonders for the family, but it can cause drift in the relationship. So this kind of conversation we're going to have today involves really talking to your partner about planning things for you both like you plan things for your kids on spring break, right? A lot of times the money, the time, and the resources go to the family. And sometimes you need to put those into the relationship. You used to probably do it all the time at the beginning. You couldn't wait to plan for Friday and all of the fun things that you were doing together, right? But now life's happening. So you have to reinvent it. That's all. And that's what we're going to be talking about. How do we reinvent it? Because these two together, the kids are starting to take time away. And, I want to go to that phone because I'm getting those little dopamine hits off my phone. And that feels good right here, right now in the moment, right? I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying that we need to do both, and we need to do both in balance. So let's go ahead and take a break. We're going to come back, and the next two segments are going to kind of blend together because I'm going to be talking about specifics on how to get the we back and have us, but have us in a way that doesn't get in the way of how wonderful we feel about each other. We'll see you soon.
Master of words, powerful player, What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
All right, back. And we're going to talk a little bit first about setting the stage for getting more we in our relationship. One of the things I want to say about is becoming we doesn't mean you lose your identity or your individualness. That's not what it is. When you watch skaters, they're definitely two different people that are out there, and each of them are in their own roles and doing their own thing. But there's a blending together. So I want to say that because I don't want people to feel like if I become a we, I lose the me in the relationship. That's not what I'm intending, and that's not what's going to happen if we do this well. So the first thing I want to talk about is step one of this, and that's why I'm saying we're kind of doing 3 and 4 in the same episode. So the first thing I put is in big bold letters to me. I said, before you have this meeting that I'm talking to you about, okay, I want both of you on your own to make a list of where you think you are in terms of coupleness. Are you more of a we, meaning what I just described, or are you more of a couple of individuals, meaning that we're us, but we're kind of in our roles and we're not really in harmony and connecting, and we can't feel it, and other people are kind of noticing that, right? So both of you on your own make a list, right? And what you're saying is, how are we and us? What are we doing? Well, we're raising kids, we're doing this, we're going to work, all of those things. And then you might say, okay, how are we a we? Well, we always go to this dance thing on Friday night, or we go out and we play tennis together. We go out and play golf, and we just really do that together, and we have fun. And yeah, we're with other people, but we're really connecting and really watching each other's game. And we're just really having fun together. That's an example of how we're a we. So you want to kind of make a list of which ones are which. Okay. So that's really, really very important. So part of what you want to look at is, do you cuddle? Do you talk during the day? Do you give opportunities? Do you make little texts to each other just thinking about yous? Those kind of things are very important to make those turn towards that set the stage for what we're talking about. Okay, so those things should be happening too. Like I said, when we're really connecting, we're probably 20 minutes of good to 1 minute of bad. If we're having trouble, we have to stay at least 5 minutes of good to 1 minute of bad. Okay, very, very important. Okay. The other thing too is when you make your list of we versus us, right, kind of thing, you can look at it as a percentage. what percentage of the time are we, in this mode where we're just kind of going through life together? And what percentage are we doing the other? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to balance, but you want to ask yourself on a felt sense in your gut, most of the time I just feel it's we are together and it's a we. Or, most of the time I feel like we're not getting that time together. So that's what you're looking for. That's what I'm wanting to do. All right. So now that you both have that, right? The step 2 is have the meeting, the State of the Union meeting. Have your meeting. I would plan for at least 45 minutes. Now, back to the letter we just had. One of the partners may not be able to do 45 minutes. So go and set it to where they feel it's doable, and then maybe they can go over a little bit or not, but check in, maybe set a timer. What you'll notice is it's an incompleted task, in which case you just want to make another appointment, make a mark in time where you stopped, and continue with the topics, right? Okay. Remember, this is Gottman stuff, but I talk about it all the time. When you do the meeting, do it with gentle startup. Say it nice, say it calm. Say it as a bit of connection to your partner that you want to talk to them. Your partner shouldn't feel like you're doing this because you want to call them out. You want your partner to feel like you're doing this because you want to be closer, right? Now, what happens when we start to feel like we're called out? That's the 4 horsemen. If your partner's feeling criticized, they're getting defensive, you're telling them that they're defective, or you just don't want to even talk to them and want to leave the meeting in the middle of it, you're probably not doing this right. So you want to make sure you get those out of the room to get back to why you're really there, which is to have this State of the Union meeting. Remember, and I've talked about it in previous shows, accept influence. I want to know your point of view. It matters to me. I care about that. Okay. So one of the things you may notice that when you're having the State of the Union meeting is it's been a long time since you both have had a 3 or a 4 day getaway where you've really just got out of town and went and played as a couple, right? If so, we're at a good time to look at your calendar and plan one. Now, remember, you might have spring break coming up. You might have other things happening, but try to look and find a weekend free. Try to get somebody to watch the kids. Try to, if you don't have kids, try to look on the calendar, look at your work schedules and get something on there, right? I mentioned earlier, right at the beginning, I deliberately put this show right now because it's close to Valentine's Day and you've already done a good ritual of connection. I want to keep spinning the pie plate. I want to keep making the momentum of this year go for your relationship. You have to do that. Rituals of connection. And you also want to look at, just your own traditions. And they don't have to be planned. Valentine's Day is a planned tradition, but you can make your own. And that's what I'm saying. How do you do that? Okay. But we want to keep this momentum going into spring. And by the way, it usually gives you an extra bounce because the weather's just better. Okay. So yeah, let's see what's my note here. Yeah, just carve out time for your marriage. Okay, once you've done that and you've had the State of the Union meeting and you're looking at this, what you really want to do is make sure that you know what goes into the we part of the relationship and start making plans towards having that happen. Now, best practices, what the very best relationships do is they have a State of the Union meeting weekly. Maybe you can only do it every other week. I don't know. I don't know your schedule, but make sure you're planning these regularly. The next thing you want to do is each day you want to really start by hugging and kissing your partner in a way that really lets them feel like you love them and you're passionate about them. Okay. Next thing you want to do is plan, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes each. What was your day like? Not to fix anything, just talk about whether you had a good day or a bad day. Sometimes those conversations are no more than, man, I got stuck in a traffic jam. I can't believe I got home a half hour late. Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe the traffic. And you just talk about it. It doesn't have to be anything heavy, but people like to get stuff off their chest and they like to share their world with their partner. It's part of we. So those kind of things need to be happening. The other thing too is, step 3, make sure that you're planning that date night once a week. even if it's just at home and watching a movie or something. Make sure you plan it. And the other thing too is look at when there was a time in your life that you really had lightning in a bottle. You can even do this in the step one part where you do it on your own. Boy, do you remember when we were dating and oh yeah, gosh, I remember that. Well, you remember what was so fun about it? Let's talk about what was super cool about that and then look to emulate it. Now, sometimes people say, yeah, but we were young and that was different and we had younger bodies and stuff. I will tell you that I talked to a lot of people in the world over the last 40 some years in my profession. And one of the things that I notice is some people say, hey, the best sex life and the best friendship and the best relationship we ever had was 25 years into our marriage, was 30 years into our marriage. So, it's kind of a myth that just because we have these golden years in our 20s, that's somehow the gold standard. I disagree with that. It's the relationship, and it's the bids for connection, and it's making these things I'm telling you work. So for example, a weekly meeting every day. You really find opportunities to tell your partner that you love them so much, and find ways that you're fond and admiring of them, and tell them, right? And then how was your day? Connecting with all of those things. And then making sure you're looking forward to that date night and keeping that going as a tradition, formal or informal. Just make sure those things happen. And then tune into what really makes your partner happy and try to make those things happen. This is what goes into that idea of step 3. Okay. So then the last step I'm going to have, I do have a finally, but the last step is make a resolution that you're going to check in at least once a week to see how these goals are going. When performance is measured, performance improves. I remember as a runner, I used to run probably an hour, hour and a half a day. If I wasn't running a day, my body was kind of like going, "Wait a minute, aren't we supposed to be doing that thing? Oh yeah, we're supposed to be running." Um, you get a good marriage going, and it's like, "Wait a minute, aren't we supposed to check in with each other? Aren't we supposed to give each other a big hug and a kiss this morning?" Those kind of things begin to feel not only routine, but your body looks forward to it. So really try to make these as their habits in your life, right? So you want to have these check-ins on how we're doing. You want to be able to just kind of have fun and chit chat, but then get back down to how are we doing? Those are those little canoe things that Dr. Dobson was telling us about. We need to keep close with each other, and we need to create these habits so it can happen, right? But like I said, what we're really doing in those date nights and stuff is creating a world and a climate where we have this idea that we're in motion, that we're creating this together, right? This rapport in our relationship and maintaining it. That's what the people who really do relationships well do. Now, sometimes we can't be the best, most wonderful relationship, but we can't necessarily be a gold medal figure skating team. But we could go out on the ice and skate the way we skate. And you know what? If that was happening, I would probably like it more than being a gold medal person, because I'm doing it and I'm going through life with my partner. That's my wish for you, is that you're really doing that, and you're making sure that maintenance is happening in form and function. Form is how we're doing it in a way that's wonderful. That's the we. Function is getting together and doing all these little parts that make it possible, and getting your partner to buy into these. That's why I say, you're watching me now, but then what I do is go back and I'd say to your partner, hey, let's watch what he's saying. Then you can stop it and you can write it down. And then you can say, let's try this. Let's have fun with it. So that's one of the reasons I do the show the way I'm doing it. And I'm telling you, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, this show is probably going to be just as relevant as it is right now, because this stuff, I use the idea of classic. Would this have been something people could have listened to 2,000 years ago? Will this be something relevant 2,000 years from now? Because this stuff works. And this stuff is tied to the human body and tied to that bonding connection that's hardwired into our existence. Let's go ahead and take a break. We'll go to the fourth. And like I said, we're going to be blending over a little bit. So some of this will be review, but I'm looking forward to giving it to you. And again, we're almost done with this program today. So we'll talk to you soon.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Okay, we are back. And like I said, in our third section today, I really kind of laid out the exercise I want you to do. So for our fourth, I always put something fun we all can go out and do and come back and talk about it. So this is that part of the episode where I do give you the assignment. But first thing is reference the third section. But I do want to kind of just recap a little bit about what that third section is entailing. First is you're going to do a State of the Union meeting, and you're going to keep in the back of your mind that that's part of the regular maintenance of your relationship. Okay? Just kind of see it that way. But don't see it as drudgery. Don't see it as homework. Don't see it as, oh gosh, we have to do this like taxes. It shouldn't be that. It should be something that you look forward to doing because you enjoy it. Let's say at the end of the evening, you got yourself a small bowl of ice cream and you always ate it. Oh, it's something you look forward to, right? That's how it should feel. Okay, that's how it should feel. So like I said, when you start that, because you're going to do a State of the Union, do the prep individually. Make sure you're asking yourself questions about, how are we connecting, right? How is that happening? I used we, I used us, but what's our connection? Are we really feeling like we're really running on high octane and firing on all cylinders, right? So you want to ask yourself questions like, have we drifted? Look at some of those questions from the mailbag today. I think they were really good for that. People weren't drifting so much as it's a problem, but they wonder if they're kind of getting off the mark. One of the things that I think happens a lot of times, and you want to ask yourself, has the tail started wagging the dog? And what I mean by that is, what roles have overtaken us? What's going on? This is especially something you see when people have kids for the first time. All of a sudden, they're really, really excited to be in the mom and dad role and play with the baby. And it's just so much fun. And the kid's doing all these new things, and you can't wait to see what's new today. I think those things are incredible. But then you look up and 2 years have gone by, and wait a minute, we're really not doing a lot for us, right? So we want to restore that. So the tail wagging the dog thing can be a real problem. The next thing you want to look at is, when do we feel most like a team? Because it's easy to say, well, we aren't feeling this, we aren't feeling this isn't happening. But I'm really big on say what you want and not what you don't want, say what you feel, not what you don't feel. So one of the things we're looking at is, when are we doing it right? When are we most like a team? That old movie, I think it was called All the Right Stuff, about the astronauts. That is how we do that. That's what we're talking about. How do we really, really just hit it out of the park? How do we do that? So notice those times so you can emulate those. So we can say, we got to do more of those, and it is funny. I don't know about y'all, but when I exercise, one of the things I might say is, gosh, I wish I could do this all the time. But then the next day I go, oh gosh, I have to exercise. What is up with that? It is just a fascination of mine. But, I always notice that when I exercise and I do it right, I always am very happy at the end that I had done it. So the same kind of thing with relationships and marriage. When we do this, it's like, gosh, I wish we could do this all the time. Right. But life gets in the way of that. We have obligations and stuff like that that are important. And sometimes they're a priority because, the boss says we need to get that report in. That's got to do that. But we don't want to do that at the expense of the relationship. Sometimes another thing I'll say is we always make withdrawals from the marriage bank and deposit it into the kids' bank or deposit it into the work bank or those types of things. Maybe you're in college, deposit it into the college bank. But then all of a sudden we notice our relationship bank is overdrawn. So we can't do that. We don't have the luxury of doing that. So, this is what you're kind of thinking about as you do my assignment from the last section. All right. So again, that's what I have number 4. Follow the steps I gave you in the third segment. Make sure you're doing that. And then this is another thing. Create at least one doable ritual of connection and practice it. One thing I mentioned at the very beginning of the year when I did New Year's resolutions, people make resolutions that are too big and unrealistic. You want to make resolutions that are doable for you. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to go out and run a marathon. Well, maybe some of you can or do or whatever, but I wouldn't start there. I would say, I'm just going to walk 3 times a week and I'm going to do it for an hour. And then one of those days I'm going to start jogging a little bit. And then I'm going to start trying to jog 2 out of the 3 days. Build it in something that you can do, that you feel good about, and you feel it's within your control. I talked to you a while back about Nora Gold's article on internal locus of control, making sure you're doing things that you feel you can. I honestly think that's one of the reasons why it's tough for people to lose weight, because they try a lot of things and it keeps going up and down. Or maybe you've got some water retention and you think you gained weight when it was just water. I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not a medical doctor, but it seems to me like people get frustrated because whatever they try doesn't work to their satisfaction, or maybe they don't like how they're looking in their clothes. All of these things create that drift away from trying. And I don't want to do that with relationships. I want you to be able to make sure we're doing things that are in chewable bites and that you can have success with it. Okay. So after your meeting, right, you've done all the things I've suggested. You've got this doable connection that you're going to try that is easy to do and is doable. The next thing is end the meeting by naming one thing that you admire about your partner and tell them one thing. Pick an adjective that might describe your partner and use the adjective and then say, that's why I like you. So, one of the things I like about my wife is she's really funny. So I might say, you said that thing the other day and I just laughed and laughed, and boy, you're great. Just something like that to your partner. Then one of the things I want you to do at the end is, one of the ways I'm going to support us so that we're more of a we than an us is this. And say what you're going to try, write it down, and then make sure your partner notices. Okay. And then they do it back for you, right? The last thing I want you to do is, how is your partner unconditionally lovable? And tell them. Keep it simple, structured, repeatable, and light. I'm Dr. Don Allen. This is all about relationships, working towards ideal marriage and loving, lasting relationships. We will see you next week. Thank you for joining. Take care.
While All About Relationships is educational and entertaining, it is not a substitute for therapy, counseling, or professional advice, but an informative space for learning and growth. So tune in each week for an engaging and reliable approach to your relationships, ensuring viewers with practical tools to create deeper connections in their daily lives. Whether tackling conflict resolution, emotional intimacy, or family dynamics, this show is your go-to resource for anyone looking to foster healthier, happier relationships in a supportive and lighthearted environment. Every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern.